The Hobbit, the fantastical and original novel written by J.R.R. Tolkien, is a classic tale that kicked off a series of books that have revolutionized modern culture. From its sequel series, The Lord of the Rings, to The Silmarillion, which is a collection of short stories that kind of build out the world of Middle-earth, these stories have changed the world of fantasy. Ideas, themes, monsters, and other aspects of these stories have directly led to modern series and cultural touchstones such as A Song of Ice and Fire, Dungeons and Dragons, and Magic the Gathering, just to name a few. While the ideas of fantasy tales such as this definitely were not new, it was this story that brought those back into cultural relevance and changed the way people looked at it. Now, hopefully if you're watching this video, you're quite familiar with the stories and characters of The Hobbit, because for this video I plan on dissecting and talking about my problem with the Hobbit trilogy of films directed by Peter Jackson. I have a lot of personal feelings and problems about this series, and I just want to talk about it, so I am. So let's do that. Right now. Spoiler warning for all those who've not read the book or seen the movie. Also, if you haven't seen the movie, it's a little weird to watch a video about all the problems with the movie. I mean, you can. I don't know why. But I mean, if you go watch the movies, you can come back and I can tell you why you shouldn't have watched them. I mean, you know. Moving on.
When The Return of the King was released in 2003, I was 10 and in line at midnight. The Lord of the Rings trilogy had a huge impact on my early life, and after the trilogy was finished, I read the books and hoped to one day see The Hobbit adapted to film. Then years of, yes, it's happening, but no Peter Jackson, then nothing, then Guillermo del Toro was picked to direct, then it became a 2-part movie, then a 3-part movie, and then Peter Jackson was back to direct, and this all took like years and years to come together. Then the movies came out, and I was so excited, after the first movie at least. It was great to be back in this world that I love so much, but as the films went on, and I rewatched, my opinion of them quickly sank. I was blinded by nostalgia and love. The facts are simple. These movies suck. They aren't good. One of the things that really stick out to me was the villains, the orcs, wargs, and goblins. In The Lord of the Rings, which came out in 2001, these orcs looked incredible. The orcs, goblins, and Uruk-hai are all practical guys in makeup and masks, and they are awesome looking. But for some reason, they decided to make them CG in The Hobbit. Why? I don't exactly know. From what I can find, it's just what Peter Jackson wanted, and to me that's a real shame because I just do not like the new orcs at all. With the practical designs, the fighting looked so much realer. Like our heroes were actually fighting these imposing monsters, but with the CGI, it just feels like a bunch of cartoon monsters fighting. Actors trying to fight a CG character almost never looks good or convincing. It's a distraction from the action that should be holding my attention. I loved how in The Lord of the Rings, the orcs all look messed up with like piercing or disfigurements. They bring that into the new orcs a bit, but it just doesn't feel the same on a CGI character as it does in a practical one. You feel like with a practical one, there's so much more effort making them have a personality. It's this whole layer that's just lost in these films. With everything being CG, it just makes the world feel a lot more fake. It's a lot easier in these movies to pick out sets and see how fake the world is. It's this cartoony look at times that just doesn't feel right.
Now I'm sure some people will say, well, The Hobbit was more childish as a book, so it makes sense to be a little more cartoony as a film. That is true, and there are definitely plenty of sequences that do that. You could use that to excuse some of the shit that's in the Hobbit movies, but this is still Peter Jackson directing it. The same guy who directed The Lord of the Rings in the same universe that The Lord of the Rings takes place. I can't pretend that the tone and more grounded nature of those films is completely lost in these movies, even though they take place in the same universe. Especially when all three of the Hobbit movies call back and constantly reference the original trilogy frequently. Now, I'm not saying that a movie that had a bunch of giant moving trees that fought a bunch of orcs is realistic, but the nature and tone of it was a lot more grounded. They weren't doing backflips and going crazy wild in the air. Sure, Legolas did some stuff with an elephant. That was a little
extreme, radical, bodacious,
wild, but there's still overall a grounded nature to it, unlike the Hobbit movies.
There are some really nice scenes, like the Gollum scene and the Council of Gandalf, Saruman, Galadriel, and Elrond, that call back to many of my favorite scenes from The Lord of the Rings. But then a little later in the same movie, there's this scene where the dwarves are running around Goblin Town and rolling all over the place, or the barrel scene in Desolation of Smaug. The movies get very serious and dramatic, and then we'll just flip straight into ridiculous cartoony action that just doesn't work.
They needed to pick a style and stick to it, because for me it was frustrating switching back and forth. I would have preferred a more Lord of the Rings style, but if they had kept the cartoony style and stuck to it, I think I might have liked it. I would have at least liked them to try. But they didn't pick a path. They just wobbled between both tones, and it made the movie feel like a complete mess to me.
Also, to tack back onto the CGI stuff, the effects in this movie are, for the most part, really well done, but then there are scenes like in Desolation of Smaug where he was covered in gold and it looks like it's from Terminator 2. These are some horrid effects, and there are a few other moments that are really pretty jarring as well, such as the barrel scene where they switch from a top-of-the-line camera to GoPros. That was interesting. The fact that there are 3 movies was also an issue because of how much they had to add and shove into these movies to fit their runtimes. This could have been 1 long movie, maybe 2, but 3 was way too much. I mean, the first 30 minutes of the first movie is spent on a dinner party that easily could have been done in 10 minutes or less. But they just add on lines and time that just doesn't need to be there. It's frustrating and hard to watch. There's also the fact that Legolas and the elves stick around for far more than they should have, because, hey, remember Lord of the Rings? Remember how cool Legolas was? Here's some more Legolas doing some impossible, stupid shit. Also, the love story between the dwarf and the elf is one of the most eye-rolling, awful, and unnecessary subplots I can think of. It went nowhere, had no point, and was just flat out bad. As I went through each movie, the feeling of dread and distaste of these movies grew stronger and stronger. After the first movie, I was excited, kinda off-put by the orcs, but I was happy. Then the Desolation of Smaug was good, but then the ending where they fought Smaug was terrible, and the cliffhanger was just frustrating. And then when the Battle of the Five Armies came out, I was mad and kind of bored the entire way through it. It's amazing to me that the man who directed Helm's Deep, one of the greatest battle sequences I've ever seen, could make such a grand war like the Battle of the Five Armies feel so boring and flat. The Battle of the Five Armies was by far the most aggravating watch for me. I mean, the opening here where they kill Smaug, that should have been the ending for the previous movie. There's just so much shit crammed into this movie especially that it just feels so fluffy and unnecessary. Subplots, characters, and all these little aspects of the movie that just don't need to be there, and they're just fluffed up because the entire movie is one long battle scene that isn't interesting, boring, or have any stakes to it because I don't care about any of the characters involved.
Now to kind of round up all the thoughts I got going up here, The Hobbit is a well-made, well-acted, well-shot mess of a movie. I think Peter Jackson and all the actors involved did a really great job with parts of the movie that they were filming. Like, they filmed good parts of it, but as a whole movie, it's a mess. There are parts that I loved, like the Gollum scene I mentioned earlier, but there are other parts that are just too bad to ignore. This is a movie that could have been better, should have been better, and should have only been 2 movies, but because of studio greed and Peter Jackson's weird choices behind the camera, that we got this mess. They kind of all just fall apart. I really wish I could have loved these movies. I really wish I could have loved these series, but I just can't. Thank you for watching this video about me complaining about The Hobbit, because this is important stuff that I need to do with my life. Thank you for watching this episode of Cold Hearted Complaints. Now I'm gonna go cold-heartedly do something else.
We've been doing this for so long, and yet it's come to this. We feel you've been treating us wrong, yet you sit there and insist. No, you two are great. Why don't you just wait? Just know this, there is no hate. But let me translate. We wish you the best of luck, but you guys are a bunch of schmucks. Playing with guys is a real crime. We quit, for real this time.